Welcome to the complete story series here at Comicstorian, your main spot for audio dramas of your favorite comic books. Today we are covering Uncanny Spider-Man issues 1 through 4, a story about what Nightcrawler did after the Hellfire Gala and during the entire event of Fall of X. This is a video that Benny recorded a while back, but was never released fully to the public. And I know he'd be annoyed with me if we didn't use his hard work, so let's get to it.
The motorcycle screeches down the street as the goon in the sidecar opens fire with his tech rifle. Die, bug! Die, die, die! The shooter bellows. The driver makes a hard turn, steering the motorcycle into Central Park. To hell with this! He shouts, his buddy turning in his seat, questioning why he would even drive into the park. This is not an appropriate getaway route, the guy says, and the driver points out that all the spider people rely on buildings in the city to swing and chase them. You gotta get clear of the towers! They got nothing! The driver says as he steers the bike through the park, and they both look behind them, proud that they lost the spider person. Until, BAMF! Nightcrawler appears in front of them, now clad in black in a red spider suit. He grabs the shooter and teleports him out of the bike with another BAMF! Before teleporting again and sending the bike spinning out of control. The driver tries to struggle to his feet. He looks up to see a new Spidey hanging by his tail from a tree, and he points at the bike, which has become lodged in the branches. Pardon me, English is not my first language, and I'm still working on my catchy one-liners in crime-fighting context, but I'm thinking that this would be a very funny moment to say. You need to practice your parking, pal, Kurt says, and pauses for a moment. Because, you see, we are in a park. Also, your bike is in a tree. One word, multiple meanings. Kurt explains this joke. The thug yells in fear, firing his weapon, but Kurt teleports around the blast with more BAMFs, using his astral blade to cut through the weapon. He finally knocks the thug out and goes to check on the stolen organ case that they had taken. Still frozen, thank goodness, Kurt says as he gently puts the case back down and turns and looks out over the park, nodding his head at a job well done. Busy, busy, doing good, he whispers to himself, and he turns as he is approached by a group of park dwellers. They come forward asking for his autograph, which Kurt is happy to give. Another woman comes out of the trees, mumbling to herself. Where's my baby? She gasps, and Kurt turns to help her, but the group is suddenly interrupted as a sentinel leans down from the trees, scanning the area. Kurt tries to move and get the park dwellers to run, but they just shout at the sentinel, explaining that they are only humans here. As Kurt prepares to fight, something whispers in his ear. Relax, we got this. The sentinel suddenly straightens up. Scan complete. No mutants detected. You may return to your business. Warm regards from your friends at Orcus, the sentinel says before rocketing up into the sky. Kurt watches in surprise as the sentinel leaves. When he turns back to the park dwellers, he finds that the strange woman has also left. She's crazy, obsessed with that damn treehouse. We think that maybe she's a secret mutie lover, the dwellers tell her. Kurt thanks the park dwellers for their time and he disappears in a BAMF cloud. But later he sits on one of the buildings in the park with Spider-Man, recounting his adventures and his one-liners while enjoying some pizza. After a few moments, Spidey awkwardly switches the topic over to the mutants. I have to ask, what's the plan, Kurt? Long term? Are you going to be Spider-Man for a while? Spidey asks. He was more than happy to give Kurt one of his old costumes so that his friend could work in the shadows to help mutants and clear his name. Memories of his demonic attack against humanity flash through Kurt's mind, and he closes his eyes. It wasn't me, Spider-Man, or at least, I wasn't me. Kurt says softly, and Spidey nods as he sits next to his friend. You don't need to prove you're a good person, Kurt. If you need help with the big picture stuff, I got your back, Spidey tells him, and Kurt nods. But he can still hear the voice in his head. It teleports around him in a cloud of white, talking about how it shouldn't be on Kurt's shoulders to fight for his entire race. Tell him it's tough to carry the weight of a whole species when it's exhausting just being a good person, the invisible gremlin whispers with a smile. Spidey waves his hand, trying to get Kurt's attention, pointing out that he kind of phased out. Kurt finally thanks Spidey for all that he's done. I thank you for your faith and the old suit. But I assure you, I'm doing precisely what I need to be doing. Helping people, one at a time, Kurt says as he looks over the city. Meanwhile, at Orcus's headquarters, one of the scientists goes to Adrian Toombs, the Vulture, explaining that there's a new Spider-Man and that the new Spider-Man is almost certainly the mutant known as Nightcrawler. Proof! The Sentinel didn't pursue. Why? Toombs questions. The lab assistant explains that since the Sentinels couldn't detect human DNA, they weren't programmed to hunt a single person. Toombs nods, looking at the digital display of Kurt Wagner. If the little maggot can beat the tech, only a matter of time before the rest of them can too. We need to know what he's doing and how he's doing it, Toombs says, pondering the issue. He finally then just nods his head. Let's do a little outsourcing, shall we? The night fades into the morning, and we have Kurt sitting in a tree in Central Park. He's enjoying his breakfast of cold pizza when he is alerted to a woman being robbed. He teleports quickly, bamfing behind the mugger and kicking him hard in the face. The guy gets to his feet, swinging his knives, trying to stab the teleporting hero. But Kurt teleports behind him and uppercuts him. He knocks the goon to the ground. The blonde jogger cheers for her savior. Rushing forward, she hugs him. She then pulls him very close, and she asks him so many questions about being a spider person and if he is from the demon dimension. Listen, I better be getting back to the demon dimension, Kurt says, but when he looks down at the thug, the man's face shifts, and Mystique is suddenly lying there. Where's my baby? She gasps as she struggles to her feet. Kurt looks down at her with shock before picking her up and bamfing away. Meanwhile, far over the city, a private plane is approaching. The mercs on board are preparing their gear for landing. They've been hired by Adrian Toombs to track down a special mutant in the city. Outside of the plane, their leader is riding her own glider on the approach. She is Silver Sable.
A homeless man is standing there, but his face shifts to that of a woman as he explains that his blue-skinned baby was taken. Suddenly, the woman's face shifts again, and Mystique is standing before Kirk. She holds up a knife, demanding to know where her baby is. Kurt backs away from his mother, holding out his hands as he tries to explain to her what is going on. We've been through this. You keep getting confused and then running off, he tells her, trying to tell her that he is in fact her son. But it's like she isn't even hearing him. He was blue. He was blue like me. I went back for something in the castle and I left him. Mystique mumbles before turning away. Kurt begins to take off his mask to show her his face, but she knocks him away and disappears into the tunnels of Central Park, shouting for him to not get involved in mutant matters. He watches her for a moment before teleporting away with a BAM! You know what? Fine! He hisses to himself as he teleports to a newsstand. He sulks for a moment before the strange, small demon Kurt appears before him, laughing that maybe Kurt isn't even a mutant anymore, since he doesn't show up on the Sentinel scanners. Kurt waves the demon away, but they're interrupted by a glowing light that bathes them both. I'm seeing angels, Kurt jokes as he looks down at Dagger, who smiles up at him. You deserve to be locked up for criminal flirtation, she tells him. Kurt removes his mask, looking down at his friend. It's rare to behold a dagger without its cloak, he tells her. Tandy nods, explaining that they had a fight and that Cloak teleported away in a sulk. The two catch up for a moment before Dagger skates away and Kurt promises to look out for Cloak. Left alone once again, Kurt pulls on the Spider-Man mask, watching the park. But suddenly, the Rhino slams into his newsstand, destroying it, sending Kurt flying. Express train coming through! Rhino shouts. As the two begin their battle, they are monitored by an Orcus ground team led by Travers. Behind the Orcus operator, Silver Sable is watching with interest as Rhino and Nightcrawler continue their fight. But suddenly, it becomes apparent that Nightcrawler is going after the mind control device that is actually attached to Rhino. Strange how he's trying to tear off that one piece of the kit. One of Sable's operators notes. Travers becomes anxious, ordering Sable's team to take out Wagner. She draws her pistol, ordering Sable's team to take out that Spider-Man. But she draws her pistol, pointing it at the back of Travers' head. "Do not presume to order my people, Mr. Travers," Sable says, explaining that this is only the first contact with their target, and they are merely assessing Nightcrawler's abilities. But Travers has already ordered the team to move in. Outside, Kurt is slammed into the ground and an energy field is thrown up. He looks around in confusion as he realizes that he can't teleport through the field. The rest of Sable's team begin to move in, opening fire with their tranq rifles, but Kurt easily dodges around the darts. Another operator steps up, firing a snare rocket at Kurt that wraps around his body, dropping him to the ground. Sable comes running up, angry that her team engaged with the target. "I know you wanted to play it cautious, but we got the little freak," Creamer, her operative, says. While they're arguing, Kurt activates his magic sword, cutting through the snare, and then he leaps up, kicking Creamer away, rushing to Sable's side. Magic sword, that was not in our file. Sable notes as she ducks under the blade, kicking him in the stomach. Kurt backflips away, but Sable reaches out, grabbing him by the tail. She pulls him back and knocking him to the ground with an elbow, continuing to hold his tail as she aims the pistol at his head. Humph, magic sword and an unexpectedly soft tail. What a day of surprises, Mr. Wagner, Sable says. But something is wrong with Rhino's mind control rig. He suddenly becomes enraged, rushing at the pair. Kurt is trying to warn Sable, but she isn't listening. "Stay down," she orders, motioning with the pistol. But Kurt suddenly grabs her as Rhino rushes through the energy field, intent on killing them both. With a bamf, they both disappear. They appear in total darkness, and Kurt explains that he can see around them and that they have appeared in an old subway tunnel. He also notes that Sable is still holding onto his tail. The two continue to talk in the dark, with Sable surprised that Kurt has been to her home country. Sparks begin to fly between them, and Sable finally removes her helmet. The helmet lights up the tunnel, and she pushes her pistol into Kurt's chin. "Don't move," she says softly. The two are very close. The tunnel suddenly begins to shake around them, and they fall to the ground with Sable on top of the mutant. She can't help herself, leaning in and kissing. Kurt kissing back until she pulls away. Sorry, she stammers as she gets up, and Kurt smiles. "Kissing instead of killing. I don't think that warrants an apology," he says. But Sable points out that it wasn't very professional. They both stand up, and Kurt realizes that the ground quakes are getting closer. Sable's radio begins to crackle as her team tries to warn her that Rhino's mind control device is malfunctioning. "I think you damaged the control apparatus. I think the signal's hurting him, and he's homing in on it like self-defense." "You're saying that Rhino's doing this? But we're 30 feet under the ground," Nightcrawler begins to state, when suddenly the ceiling crumbles inward as Rhino pushes his way into the subway tunnel. "Signal hurts! Purge signal!" he shouts in anger and pain. Both Sable and Kurt back away, but Kurt thinks that he can manage to teleport the two of them away. "Where would you take me?" Sable asks with a smile, and he leans in close to her. "Ah, Freyline, where wouldn't I? But alas," he says as they suddenly leap towards Rhino. "I didn't mean you!" he shouts as the two suddenly disappear. He bamps into Central Park, plummeting towards the ground, riding on Rhino's back, trying to rip the control device off of his head, but it won't come loose. He finally teleports away as the villain slams into the Orcus van on the ground. Luckily, Travers was able to leap to safety. He stares in shock at the massive Rhino crushing his van. Below them, in the tunnels, Silver Sable sits quietly on a pile of rubble, tapping her radio, her thoughts still filled with images of Kurt Wagner. "This may be a more challenging job than we thought," she tells her team. Days pass. At Orcus, Adrian Toombs, aka the Vulture, and Nimrod are watching footage of the Sable team and their conflicts with Nightcrawler. Finally, Toombs requests that he be able to test his latest creations in capturing the resisting mutant. Nimrod finally agrees, informing Toombs that he may put his talents into the field and that they should be backed up by the Silver Sable team. "They will serve as control against which we judge our creations," Nimrod says. That night, Kurt and Sable meet atop a dark rooftop in the city and have personal time. Afterwards, they cuddle together and enjoy champagne, Kurt smiling at the beautiful woman, asking how she's able to hunt him during the day and enjoy his company at night. She sits up. "Look, I'm a professional. My team costs an absurd amount of money and we adhere utterly to the stipulations of our contracts, including periods of non-operational rest. When the helmet is off, I am Silvija Sablenova, off-the-clock tourist, highly deserving of fun, and you are Kurt Wagner, velvety blue himbo with a remarkable tail." She turns back to him smiling. "When the helmet is on, I am Silver Sable and you are the creepy crawler. And sooner or later, I will get you." The two continue to enjoy each other's company for some time. learning of each other's past until Silver Sable sighs, pointing out that her mother always said to never fall for a complicated man. At the mention of a mother, Kurt finally stands, remembering that Mystique is still running around at Central Park, pretending to be a homeless man. He bids Sable goodbye, promising to find her tomorrow night. "Not if I find you first," she whispers as he disappears. Moments later, Kurt has gone into the park, but Mystique suddenly goes rushing past him, armed with a knife and a gun. "Run as fast as you can! They have your scent now!" she shouts over her shoulder. Kurt looks around in surprise until he sees a transformed Wolfsbane and dagger on a nearby rooftop. "What the F?" Kurt begins to state, but Mystique shouts back at him, "Run!" A blast from dagger hits his arm right before he teleports away, but he looks up to see the transformed heroes still chasing after him. "What did you do?" he questions. "Scent." They both hiss as he continues to teleport, but they track him quickly. When he appears again, Wolfsbane slams into him, knocking him to the ground. Kurt tries to struggle to his feet as the pair stand over him. "We're not being controlled. We've just changed what matters. The wash of sensation, the ecstasy of data. You'll see soon." Dagger tells him. Kurt rolls over, trying to tell Dagger that Cloak needs her, but she shakes her head, motioning behind him. Cloak suddenly appears behind Nightcrawler, wrapping him in the darkness of the cloak. "Regroup later. Business here. New scent," Cloak tells Dagger and Wolfsbane before the two hounds turn and rush away, attracted by a new scent. In moments, Cloak appears over a weeping Mystique who is calling for her baby. "Raven Darkholm, do not be afraid. The cloak holds no fear to one who has already abandoned hope," he whispers to her, and he begins to wrap the cloak around her. But he stops, looking up in shock as a magic blade suddenly cuts through his fabric. The cloak falls away, revealing only Tyrone, as Kurt stands, his sword in hand. "There is always hope, Tyrone, in darkness more than anywhere," Kurt says, Mystique suddenly standing and drawing her pistol. She fires a single round into his head. "No!" Kurt shouts, reaching for her, but Mystique turns away, motioning to him. "Hush, they have the scent," she says, motioning him to a nearby compost bin. They both jump in, aware that Tyrone has already begun to heal. He suddenly stands, the cloak reattaching itself to him. "Scent? Summoned," Cloak says before disappearing. Save, Mystique and Kurt pull themselves from the compost bin. They follow after the hounds until they see the team has captured another group of mutants. As they watch, Mystique turns to Kurt. "You are a fool, Masked Man. I told you to run, not to fight. I was trying to lead them away," Mystique says as she motions to the 3 mutants that have been captured by the hounds. "They won't be mutants for long," Mystique whispers. The little demon Nightcrawler appearing to Kurt again, explaining that he knows what is happening, that Orcus is using the captured Warlock to reprogram the mutants into hounds. Mystique and Kurt watch in horror as Vulture appears, but his suit has also changed. It seems to be augmented by Warlock, and as he reaches out his hands, techno-organic tendrils snake down and begin to reprogram the captured mutants. "Don't be afraid, mutant filth. Today I give you what your people refused to give me. Immortality." A little time passes, and Spider-Man himself, the actual Peter Parker, lowers down into an anti-mutant crowd, which has captured a supposed mutant and is carrying him through the streets. Guys, there's clearly a little confusion here, so I'm just going to say this once. Pizza dude good, mob violence bad, Spider-Man says. On a nearby rooftop, Nightcrawler is watching the display, the imaginary demon on his shoulder asking why he doesn't intervene. "Are you kidding? He's natural at this stuff. People love Spider-Man," Kurt says, waving the demon away. The crowd turns on Spidey, shouting that the pizza guy left a flower at the X-Men's former treehouse in Central Park. "They were my best tippers!" the pizza guy shouts, and the crowd also points out that people have said that the pizza guy has strange powers and that Orcus pays for mutant bounties. "You are correct, citizen. Your enterprising spirit is appreciated," a sentinel says as it leans down between 2 of the buildings. "Hey, I'm dealing with this Tim Pot. You touched that guy and we're..." Spidey begins to state, but the sentinel leans down, scanning the pizza guy, revealing that he is not in fact a mutant. Watching over them, Kurt nods and motions to his demon friend. "Vera, you see, it comes to nothing," he says, and he looks again when the sentinel continues. "We will detain your captive for interrogation on suspicion of sympathizing with the enemy," the sentinel rumbles, but Spider-Man swings in front of the robot, refusing to let it take the man. The sentinel then scans him. "Mutant detected," it says, and the crowd looks up in shock as they now believe that Spider-Man is a mutant. They begin to shout angrily at him, and the sentinel reaches out for him. "Mob violence bad! Mob violence bad! Don't you people listen!" Spidey shouts. Kurt looks up and across from him, Raven appears. Mystique hefts a rocket launcher onto her shoulders, aiming it down at the crowd. "Disgusting little worms!" she hisses, firing the missile. It's streaking towards the crowd, but Kurt gets to his feet, pulling on his mask, bamfing just in time to catch the rocket and whirl it into the Sentinel's mouth. "Hey, Dad Roboter! Open wide and say ah!" Kurt jokes, the Sentinel exploding and Spidey leaping down to grab the pizza guy and swing him to safety. A short time passes and he leaps to join Nightcrawler. "Not bad," Spidey says, congratulating Kurt on the save. He asks why Mystique would fire into the crowd and not at the Sentinel, and Kurt motions to the woman who was beating people in the anti-mutant crowd. "She takes rejection very personally," Kurt says before rushing forward and stomping the woman. He holds up his spirit sword. "Stop it!" he orders, and Raven looks at him for a moment before rushing away. "Get the pizza guy to safety," Kurt says to Spider-Man before chasing Raven into the streets. Unknown to Kurt, Silver Sable is watching the encounter later on the Sentinel's recorder at the Orcus base. "Some might say that this is cheating, using Orcus resources to get intel on your man," Toombs says as he stalks into the room, leading his group of mutant hounds who are dragging another captured mutant. "I was under the impression that I work for Orcus," Sable points out as she turns to regard the Vulture. The Vulture smiles, pointing out that she still hasn't captured Nightcrawler, and now he has his own hounds on the street. "And my money's on them," he tells her, watching as his hounds put the mutant into containment before turning and stalking out of the room. "Take my advice, Miss Sable Nova. Quit while you can. You've had one too many near misses." Later that night, Kurt and Sable sit and enjoy dinner on top of the Brooklyn Bridge. Kurt continuing to treat the situation lightly, joking and flirting with Sable, but she stops him, finally telling him that she can't keep this up. "As much as we are clearly a long way from just having fun, we need a real talk," she says, pointing out that he is doing everything in his power to ignore what he really needs to do, including his costumed exploits and spending time with her. Kurt pushes away from the table, still refusing to focus on what is going on with mutant kind. "Not you too! Look, I'm through with," he begins to state before turning and bamfing away, but Sable leaps after him, grabbing a hold of his back. "Let go!" he snaps at her, and she steps away, reminding him that his people need him, that his mother needs him. My people! I spent my entire adult life sacrificing for my people. I have spilled my blood, lost my soul, and why? I have lived and died for a way my people did not start, and declined to win. Where did it get me?" He shouts at her. "I deserve to stop! I deserve—" He continues, but Sable steps forward, kissing him, reminding him that life doesn't care what someone deserves as she pulls away. There are no coffee breaks for a good heart, and love isn't all you need, she whispers, but they're interrupted by her phone buzzing. She turns to leave, asking him if they can meet later, that she needs to see him. Alone, Kurt looks over at Central Park as snow begins to fall from the sky. A short time later, Sable meets with Creamer at the entrance to their safe house, questioning why he would contact her during off-duty hours. But the merc pulls a pistol. "You know I can take that from you and break your spine in 3 moves," she says with a raise of her eyebrow, and Creamer nods, asking how she could sneak away every night and be with their target. "You bugged me," Sable notes, and Sable sighs, telling him that she's going to cancel the contract and return the money, but Creamer shakes his head, knowing that she won't do that because their country needs the money that they bring in. "We finish the job whatever it takes," he reminds her. She sighs, knowing that he's right. Later, Sable is waiting at Kurt's secret hideout, where he has brought her many times. He appears in the shadows behind her, perhaps not noticing that she is dressed in her combat suit, or merely trusting her. "Well, what did you want to tell me?" he asks quietly, and she pulls up her helmet. "That I'm sorry." Behind him, the rest of the team move in, firing their stun rifles, bringing Nightcrawler to the ground. A little while later, the Sable team is dragging Nightcrawler through the portal into Orcus's base, and on the screens, the Vulture's eyes widen in surprise at this turn of events. "Well, I'll be," he says, nodding for his team to allow Sable to enter with the mutant. Kurt, still groggy as the Sable team moves forward, disappears into the portal, entering Orcus at last as they have captured him.
And that was issues 1 through 4 of Uncanny Spider-Man. Be sure to keep your notifications on, as there will be a follow-up video of this involving X-Men Blue Origins and Uncanny Spider-Man number 5. I know, it's weird, but it's how Benny had these videos planned, and so I want to follow that. But what did you guys think of this story? Let me know in the comments down below, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Rest in peace, Benny.